Caltech is the largest employer in Pasadena, so a lot of Pasadenans are Caltech people, and transportation safety matters a ton to the Institute. So we are very, very happy to be hosting this meeting tonight. And we also want to say thank you for our partnership on the Michigan intersection. That's been such an amazing improvement. It's really nice. So with that.
Thank you. Thanks, Ann. My name is Jason Lyons. I have the honor and privilege of representing District 7 in Pasadena, which you are in right now. It goes from the Playhouse across Caltech and PCC and all the residential neighborhoods that surround them. On the first Saturday of every month, I hold a constituent coffee. In fact, that's coming up this Saturday at 9 a.m. over at Paso Royo on South Lake, 251 South Lake. But that's kind of a freewheeling conversation. Whatever people want to talk about, they come, they bring topics, we talk back and forth, and it's a good conversation, and you should come. But every month at that coffee, I have to at some point call a time limit on talking about traffic because there are other issues in the city and things we need to talk about. But it is always the biggest thing we talk about, transportation in the city, and in particular, transportation safety. It's a thing I hear from you about a lot. And then, as you know, tragically, the weekend before Thanksgiving, Dr. Lau was killed on Cordova in an accident with a vehicle. I want to say that tonight's meeting is not in particular about that accident. And in fact, it may be frustrating for some of you, but I think our city officials are going to be limited in what they can say about that because the investigation of that accident is ongoing, and its causes and solutions have not been made public or maybe not determined. And so we're all waiting for that. So it's not so much about that incident, but certainly that incident reminded me of the urgency to come together. So the point of tonight is for you to be able to hear from city leadership, our City Manager Miguel Márquez, Director of Transportation Joaquin Siques, and Chief of Police Eugene Harris. And then we have a lot of police staff here with us as well. A lot of the command staff is here to talk about our approach to transportation safety. And we talk about the 3 E's a lot in the Municipal Services Committee, which is engineering, education, and enforcement. Those are the sort of the 3 legs of the stool of transportation safety. And so I wanted you to hear from city leadership directly about how we approach all of those. And then I want them to hear from you about your experience of how it's going, because there's the experience sort of objectively and quantitatively on paper of how things should go and how they go. And then there's the human subjective experience of what it's like to actually try to cross Del Mar or California. And it can feel dicey. So it's a back and forth. All of these 3 gentlemen will talk to you a little bit and present, and then we'll take questions and comments and have a back and forth at the end. All right. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to our city manager, Miguel Márquez.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Miguel Márquez. I have the honor and the privilege of being your city manager. I've been city manager for almost 3.5 years, but will be, I don't know if you saw in the paper, I will be retiring in the next couple of months when the city council picks my successor. And I'm doing that just so you know, not because I feel I'm ready to retire or want to retire, but my father passed away this past August, and I have to take care of my mother who has significant medical needs. But that said, it's really been an honor and a privilege to be in this community and to help it grow and be someone who benefited from all the incredible work this community has done throughout the decades. When I look back on the 3.5 years that I was here, there's no question Pasadena is different and special. And I've thought really hard about what makes it special. And what I ultimately concluded is it's about a level of civic engagement I have not seen elsewhere. And I'm from Northern California. Sure. Oh, my goodness. It's a big difference. So I was saying, I'm from Northern California, came down here. And what I noticed that's very different and special is the level of civic engagement. Tonight is the perfect example. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being engaged. Thank you for helping us do a better job. the message I want to get across, I'll be very brief, but when I look at what a city does, the single most important thing we do and duty we have is to keep you all safe. That implies a lot of different things, but among them, one of the very key cornerstones is going to be traffic safety. So, I'm here. We have Director of Transportation, Joaquin Siques, who's a big part of that, the engineering part of trying to keep you safe on traffic, and Police Chief Gene Harris, who also plays a very important role in how we keep you safe. I think next up will be Joaquin. He will have a presentation that'll help give you some of the ideas or some of the things that we're doing to help keep you safe in traffic. But I want to just share that, I've had the privilege of, in my 3.5 years, appointing both of them to be department heads. But in particular, when I met with Joaquin and we talked, what stood in my mind that made him distinguished from the other candidates that I was considering was that he went to UC Berkeley, where he and I both went to graduate school. And I know that was terrific, but he did his thesis or his master's or his work on traffic safety. And he told me he has a passion for traffic safety. And I said, you're the right guy to head up our Department of Transportation here in Pasadena. So without further ado, we'll pass it on to Joaquin Siques, our Director of Transportation, who will let you know what we're doing in that regard. And we're happy to answer questions afterwards. Okay.
Let me know in the back if you can't hear me. Sometimes I tend to back away from the mic a little bit. Again, Joaquin Siques, Director of Transportation. Thank you all for being here. As Miguel had said, traffic safety is something that is not only important to me, but also to our department, our entire city. It's something that we focus on and we really prioritize in everything we do here in the city. My presentation today is going to walk through a couple things. I'm going to talk a little bit about our safe system approach to traffic safety and how we're really looking at this holistically, growing beyond the engineering, education, and enforcement into how we look at system safety of traffic altogether. From there, I'm going to talk a little bit about some data and then go into some of our projects and programs. And after that, I'll hand it off to Chief Harris, and then we'd really like to hear your feedback and really get questions from you and see how we can improve, and also see what areas that you're experiencing issues and concerns. So I'll start with the safe system approach. And what this is really a holistic view of how we address safety within the entire network. And it's based on a set of principles that are on the outside ring of the diagram here and elements in the middle. And I'm going to go around the principles because I think they're important. First off, it's humans make mistakes. We're all human. We all make mistakes in the choices we make. Sometimes those are intentional, but they can be mistakes. If you get into a vehicle impaired, if you're running across the street and not looking both ways, things that can be a simple mistake until it's at a point or an instance where it becomes a collision and it can be fatal. And it can be fatal because humans are vulnerable. As humans, we are vulnerable. We're made out of flesh and blood, and the most vulnerable humans are pedestrians and bicyclists because they're not in this metal box. But even as a motorist, you are vulnerable to collisions, and it's important to recognize that vulnerability. Third is that responsibility is shared. It's not about one person. It's not about one thing like an element like design, but you'll notice in many collisions, it's about multiple factors. And it's that responsibility, that shared responsibility that we all have to take on in everything we do as we're driving, and we're maybe not thinking about how fast we're going. And you look down at your dashboard and you're like, wow, I'm going 10 miles over the speed limit in a residential street. Or as you're walking and riding your bike and crossing the street and being aware of the surroundings. The next piece is that safety is proactive. Well, I'll provide a lot of data here. It's one of the pieces we look at, but we also look at the system as a whole. So a lot of the programs that we have aren't trying to chase collisions, but we're trying to make the system better holistically. The other point is that redundancy is crucial because many times it takes more than one mistake for a collision to occur. And then lastly, and most importantly, is that death and serious injury is unacceptable. So those are the principles. And then the 5 elements inside, the safe vehicle, safe speeds, safe roads, post-crash care, and safe road users are really the conduits that get us to the safe system approach. And I'll talk a little bit more about those later, specifically the safe speeds, safe roads, and safe road users, because that's, from a department standpoint, what we have the most impact on. But we do also coordinate across departments regarding post-crash care and kind of through legislature on safe vehicles. So I'm going to go back to that death and serious injuries unacceptable piece. In October of last year, City Council approved a focused local roadway safety action plan. And part of that was establishing a goal of 0 roadway fatalities by 2035. And this goal is something that we can reach. As we start looking at the numbers, you'll see that we average about 6 fatalities a year in the city. It's 6 more than we need to have. But getting there really requires us all to participate as pedestrians, as motorists, talking to children that are driving, younger drivers, thinking about how we navigate the roadway network, either by foot, by bike, or by car. So I'm going to get into some of the data real quick. And these are the Pasadena collision trends. So what you'll see on this chart is a 10-year collision history. You'll see an asterisk on 2025 because there's still a couple numbers trickling in from our collision reports, but this is a pretty good representation of where we are as of this month. The green line on the top is the total number of collisions that we have year to year. You'll see that dip in 2020 because of COVID, and then the numbers started coming up again year to year. The blue line is the number of pedestrian total injury and fatality collisions, and the gray line at the bottom is the total number of bicycle injury and fatality collisions. We look at total injury and fatality collisions instead of all collisions because it provides us more reporting. Property damage only collisions are not always reported, so we're trying to track the injury and fatality collisions. Unfortunately, what you'll see in all 3 of these is that trend line, that little dash line in each of these is moving in the wrong direction. It's moving upward. And we continue to look for ways to reduce these numbers so that we can get that trend going back down. The donuts, if you will, on the right provide us the information about collisions and who's involved. So the one on the top right is the number of collisions that we have throughout the city. 89% of them are vehicle to vehicle. 7% include a pedestrian, and 4% include a bicyclist. However, if you look at the total fatal collisions, 46% of our fatal collisions are pedestrians. This really brings back the point that humans are vulnerable, and the pedestrians are really overrepresented in the severity of injuries and collisions throughout our system. One other point that I wanted to note, I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I get the numbers right, is the increasing trend of pedestrian fatalities nationwide. Between 2009 and 2019, so we're looking at the pre-COVID numbers, we spiked as a nation from about 4,000 in 2009 to 6,200 in 2019. That's a 50% increase in the total number of pedestrian fatalities nationwide. Number of factors: cars are getting heavier, cars are moving faster, people are feeling more comfortable at higher speeds in vehicles, but it's just a very alarming trend in what we're seeing in the amount of pedestrian fatalities throughout the nation. This heat map here provides our total injury collisions, so all modes, cars, bikes, and peds, for a 5-year window of 2021 through 2025. You'll see the red concentration is where we have higher concentration of collisions. It's not about the severity here, but just the concentration. And they tend to follow high vehicle traveled corridors. You'll see on the top there that that line that goes east and west is Washington Boulevard. As you move down, you see Orange Grove. And then as you move down in the Central District, you'll see a bigger cluster in the Central District where we have more activity, more volumes, and more intersections as well. But this is the total all injury and collisions for all modes. When we remove the vehicular collisions and we just look at pedestrians, this is what you'll see. Also similar clusters in the central business districts, such as South Lake, you'll see there, and Old Pasadena area. But you also see areas like Orange Grove Boulevard that continue to have these clusters of collisions over this 5-year period. And then if we go back one more layer and we just look at killed and severe injury collisions, and again, this is all modes, not just pedestrians, you'll see where we're having some of these throughout. And they're scattered throughout the city, and that's one of the reasons why we have to be proactive and can't just try to chase where these occur. But there are trends in kind of the, again, heavier trafficked areas and some of these larger corridors. The numbers in the past 5 years is what you see here. In 2021, we had a peak in total fatal collisions, and this is number of fatalities, not number of collisions. So some of these may have been multiple fatalities in one collision. And then, but the numbers go up and down. And last year in 2025, we had 3, 1 ped, 1 auto, and 1 motorcycle. The pedestrian collision was the one that we had mentioned earlier here in Cordova. And it has an asterisk because it's not in the system yet because the report isn't completed, but we wanted to include the data with this presentation. So as we look at ways to make the system safer, we tend to look at 3 main categories: safe speeds, safe roads, and safe road users. Safe speeds is a critical piece of reducing pedestrian collisions. And a lot of this, again, I'm focusing on pedestrians because of the vulnerability of pedestrians. And this chart, it's an older chart. It's about 10 years old, but I like using it because of the visual representation. The data on the left has been updated, and actually the numbers end up being a little higher now, the percent of death at higher speeds. But if a pedestrian is hit by a vehicle traveling at 20 miles an hour, they have about a 10% chance of dying. If a pedestrian's hit by a vehicle at 30 miles an hour, they have about a 40% chance. When the vehicle is traveling at 40 miles an hour, that percentage is about 80 to 85% chance. The image itself also brings up one other aspect that I'd like to point out is that cone of vision as a motorist. When you're at 20 miles an hour, you tend to see more of that street. And as you get faster, your vision tends to focus on what's in front of you. And that's critical when we're talking about pedestrian safety and really all safety, because it's that cross traffic that can create some of the worst and highest level of severity collisions, either through broadsides or through impacts with pedestrians and bicyclists. We have a number of current programs in effect to really address safe speeds. In our arterial speed management programs, we use traffic signal timing to control that signal progression to try to keep speeds at or near the speed limit. We use speed feedback signs like the one in the center there to remind you as a driver how fast you're going. And really the effectiveness of these signs is not for the person that's intentionally flying through a corridor, but it's for the motorist that is going faster than they think they're going through some of these streets and realize that you're traveling too fast. Because many times when we have these types of collisions, it's not a driver that's trying to be completely negligent. It's a driver that is just going faster than they should be, and because of one reason or another, there's a collision, and that's what creates those impacts. And then lastly is setting enforceable speed limits and making sure that we have the ability to enforce the speed limits that we set. Through neighborhood traffic management programs, we have speed humps throughout residential streets. And now we also have speed tables as a pilot program, which is the image on the right, which is a wider, if you will, speed hump that can be used at streets that are not 25-mile-an-hour residential streets, but like 30-mile-an-hour streets to get people down to that speed that's appropriate for that type of street. Traffic circles, chicanes, curb extensions, all different types of treatments that we have to try to reduce speeds along these corridors. And then that last bullet there is the greenways is another current program that we will be kicking off that effort to work with the community and residents and businesses along 4 north-south corridors to see how we can slow down speeds along those corridors and get that feedback and try some projects along those corridors. Another part of reducing speeds and reducing speed limits is the development or identification of safety corridors. Assembly Bill 43 allowed us to create corridors where we can reduce speed limits once we have identified the higher percentage of roadways that have the highest percentage of fatal, serious injury, or injury collisions along them. So this was part of our focused local roadway safety action plan that we looked at the corridors, identified these 13% of roadways, which are these major corridors that have the highest percentage of these types of injury, these types of collisions throughout the city. And by defining these, we can go back and do our speed studies to be able to determine a lower speed limit. It gives us the opportunity to drop the speed limit down an additional 5 miles beyond what we could do before in setting speeds along these roadways. And setting speed limits can get complicated, so I'm not going to go into all the details of it, but we're required to set speed limits a certain way that they can be enforceable. If we just put out a sign that says 25 miles an hour, but the speed of the roadway is comfortable to drive at 40 miles an hour, like one of these larger streets, we cannot enforce that 25 mile an hour speed limit using radar or LiDAR. The other piece is the development of safe roads. So we talked a little bit about safe speeds. Now let's talk about other types of treatments to implement to create safer roads. 2 projects that were recently completed. One here, and from Caltech just mentioned, was the Del Mar and Michigan traffic signal. Another one that we recently completed this year is Orange Grove and Craig. But the ability to separate conflicting movements through either time or space is a big part of the safe system approach. So assigning the right-of-way to a motorist or pedestrian at an intersection helps us separate those conflicting movements. Another set of programs that we have, and you'll start seeing more of these, is the pedestrian hybrid beacon, the HAWK, that's shown in that top image there. One was recently installed at Washington Boulevard and Hudson. Just this past month, the installation was completed and it's been turned on. There's more of these in surrounding agencies. You'll see these in other agencies around us. And we're now pushing to be able to install these at locations where traffic signals may not meet the criteria that we need in order to install a traffic signal. But we want to be able to provide that separation or the assignment of the right-of-way to pedestrians to be able to cross the street at a location with a active control for the motorist. So it's not just yellow flashing lights that warn a motorist that there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk. This actually requires the motorist to stop at the red signal, similar to a traffic signal. And then there's also roadway reconfigurations. Union Street is one where the reduction in the number of travel lanes and the addition of the bicycle facility reduced the speeds along that corridor by narrowing lanes and reducing the number of lanes. It reduces the likelihood of people speeding through there, and it's shown in the data that the speeds have been reduced. Cordova Street, it was another corridor that similarly we, through the installation of the bike facilities, the curb extensions, were able to reconfigure the roadway to reduce speeds. But even with that, even with the design and the engineering that goes behind these types of treatments, there is always risk in crossing the street. So we're looking at other ways to make the potential for collisions less likely. And then lastly, Fair Oaks Avenue north of Washington, not in this area, but another corridor that we recently removed travel lanes this year as well. And we're getting a lot of positive feedback from the residents and businesses there that we're really pushing for this type of treatment. Other current programs for safer roads, continental crosswalks. You'll see the crosswalk striping in that image on the middle there, upper middle. And it's a way to provide more visibility of crossing locations. And one of the things that we've seen really also provide a good safety enhancement at signalized intersections is that leading pedestrian interval where the pedestrian gets to walk 5 seconds before the parallel through movement. And if there have been a number of them installed in this area, and if as you walk through there, at least when I'm walking through, I definitely feel that higher level of comfort because it's only the pedestrian that's entering the crosswalk, entering the roadway, and at that point you're more visible to motorists, and you've got ownership of that space, so you don't have cars kind of zipping around trying to make that turn without looking for someone that's at the sidewalk trying to get into the crosswalk. In other projects, again, we have more of those hybrid beacons coming into the city. A couple of things I also wanted to note with some of our pilot projects on Wilson and San Pascual is you'll see one of the LED enhanced flashing stop signs. We're evaluating the effectiveness of those and want to be able to implement more of these at locations where you may have an unexpected stop sign location, either because it's near a traffic signal or a number of criteria that we have. But the initial data has shown that they have been found to be effective at reducing the number of people that are really blowing through the stop sign. Speed tables is the pilot program that I mentioned before. And another piece here that we're implementing at certain intersections is called centerline hardening. Excuse me, and that's the image. The picture is on the bottom right there. It's a way to provide a treatment at the intersection that requires the motorist to make a sharper turn, if you will, around this type of treatment so that the area of exposure, the area of risk at the crosswalk gets reduced and you don't have that faster movement that's happening at the intersection. And lastly, just to mention one other thing is quick builds. One of the things that we really are pushing more for implementation is trying things with paint and plastic, seeing how it impacts the speed, impacts the safety, and also traffic flow and circulation around corridors before we go in and start installing things in concrete that take a longer time to implement because of a number of factors, including costs and just construction. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about safe road users. We're all users of this roadway network, whether we walk, whether we bike, whether we're driving or on a bus. And there's a need for that responsibility to be shared between all of us. So that means not using the road while you're distracted or impaired. And that's for all the roadway users. It's following rules. I know it seems so simple, but I think that's one of the key things that creates the potential for collisions is just not following the rules, not following the speed limit, not understanding why you shouldn't be driving on the wrong side of the road. Things like this that impact safety. And as roadway users, we need to just kind of remind ourselves of that and take that extra beat, take that extra breath, because that alone will reduce the number of collisions that we have. And then lastly, acting within the limits of road design. We have instances where we put in a traffic circle or something else to reduce speeds, but motorists that aren't acting within the limits of the road design will hit the curb or will hit a sign. These infrastructure enhancements are in place to help reduce that speed. And as roadway users, we need to act within the limits of that roadway design. And lastly, part of this is just an education strategy that we implement in order to get this messaging out. Because again, at the end of the day, we all share this responsibility to walk safer, drive safer, and how we can get this information out to families, to school-age children, to drivers, is a critical part of what we're doing. And it's something that we really always need to improve on, because, messaging on a billboard or messaging through social media, targeted social media, still may not be reaching the right audience. So we're always striving to get better at providing this message so that we can help people understand what their role and behavior means to traffic safety. And just a few kind of the campaigns that we've had. We start on the bottom right there with that We Make Time campaign, where it was really focused on parents and school zones, but also we had separate messaging also for children within school zones. Then we had the Slow Your Roll campaign, because a vast number of our collisions happen at signalized intersections. If we get back to that map and see that cluster of collisions, I want to say, don't know the exact number, but between 60 and 70% of our collisions happen at signalized intersections where we're supposed to be assigning the right of way. People, and so it's how people operate within those intersections. And then more recently, we started a campaign that was a little bit more somber and dark, really trying to reinforce the message of the impacts that collisions have, not only to the victims, but just the physical impacts of these types of collisions. So that's one of the many messages that we had that we started using that approach. And that's a campaign that we roll out different seasons of the year to keep that messaging out there. So with that, I'm going to stop there and hand it over to the police chief. But again, I kind of just want to close out. And as you think about traffic safety, you think about the interaction between motorists and pedestrians, motorists and motorists, bicyclists. I think it's important to think through that safe system approach and that understanding of all the different elements and how, a mistake that's made by one person combined with distraction from another person can really lead to, a fatal situation, and how we all have to take account of that. And us as engineers and planners need to design the roadways to reduce those speeds so that we can create that redundancy in the system to reduce the impact of some of these collisions so that they don't result in fatalities or serious injuries.
So introduce the members of your team who are here with us.
Yes, thank you. We do have a couple staff here from the department. Nader Asmar is our principal traffic engineer. Is responsible for a lot of the implementation that goes out in the street. And he's the one who manages the team that reviews all of the traffic investigations. So if you have a concern about crossing a street at a certain location, if you would like to see a crosswalk or add a red curb or whatever that may be, it's his team that does that. And that's a big part of what we do in that engineering and operations division. And Jenny Cristales Ceballos is the Deputy Director of Transportation. She oversees that group and our planning group. And our planning group really is the multimodal planning efforts that leads to our development, our pedestrian transportation action plan, our bicycle transportation action plan, our active transportation plan that's coming. A lot of these plans that we're looking at the city as a whole to identify ways to improve the safety along the corridors, and then turn that into action by building things and then putting things out in the street to reduce speeds and enhance safety. Am I missing anybody? No, I think that's it. With that, I can hand it over to Chief Harris.
Thanks, Bo. Good evening, everybody. First off, before we get started on the police role in the way that we conduct our business with regard to the 3 E's, as you've heard, I want to say thank you to all of you folks for being here. As you heard the city manager talk about civic engagement, it is special to have this number of people turn out and concern for their community. It doesn't always happen in all communities, so really it's a kudos to you for really taking interest and coming out here and finding out what's going on in your community. So thank you very much for that. I'll start off with introducing a few folks that are here. They'll be available for questions when we're done. The police department command staff is here. On this side, we have Commander Dawkins in charge of our field operations division. Right next to him, we have Deputy Chief Art Shute in charge of our administrative section. We have Commander Marcia Tagliaretti here in the back, responsible for our criminal investigations division. And we have, Bill Grisafi. He's here in charge of our Special Operations Division. And from our leadership team, back on my right here, is Tony Russo, the lieutenant in charge of our traffic section. So he likes to hide behind the pole, but we'll be able to find him for questions here in a bit. So he also rides a motorcycle, so he's cool. So that's always good. So you heard from the experts at DOT, and again, for us, the 3 E's are very important: education, engineering, and enforcement. The first 2 are interchangeable. Whichever comes first, it always works out. And the engineering piece is really their bailiwick in DOT and sometimes our public works section. But for the police department, it's the education and the enforcement piece that's super important. The enforcement piece is always last because we want that to be the last resort, right? We want to learn these lessons through education. We want to learn these lessons through engineering by preventing some of the things that you've seen on the previous presentation. And then the enforcement comes in at the end where we really, nobody likes to get pulled over. Nobody likes to go through a driver's license checkpoint, but these things are crucial in our ability to try and mitigate some of the things that you've heard about, in particular fatalities. So with regard to our enforcement part of this and our education, we have several entities that provide resources and funding for us to come out and really engage in certain problems as we look at what might be considered primary collision factors. And so when we look at those things every year, there's a constant analysis as to what it is that's causing these collisions. And we get resources and funding from places like the Office of Traffic Safety, other county, state, and federal agencies that will provide those resources so that our traffic section and some of our patrol folks and others within the organization can really go out there and impact some of these problems. So as an example, we have distracted driver campaigns. We have distracted and impaired driver campaigns, and we have speed issues that we deal with on a regular basis, and other safety things that our traffic section and our lieutenant will give you details on that if you have questions for him. But we have all kinds of things: bicycle safety, all different kinds of educational programs. You wouldn't believe how much we do a lot more education than we do enforcement, or at least that's what the plan is. But sometimes that enforcement becomes necessary. So when you see a driver's license checkpoint, or you see a DUI checkpoint, or you see us out on traffic stops, or you see the pedestrian decoy program, a lot of people get upset about those things, but they really are put together with the best practices in mind. We've gone through the science of traffic safety, worked with people like DOT and other studies that really give us the tools to try and best prevent some of these issues. So if you've ever been stopped at a pedestrian decoy where you missed the person walking across the street, that is a person employed by us walking across the street to really gauge how safe a particular intersection may be, or whether it's distracted driving, some of the other issues that are there. We do a lot of warnings. We do a lot of warnings that don't result in citations, but we also write a lot of citations, and those things are very, very important. So to anybody who's ever gotten one, it's uncomfortable to get stopped. It's not fun, but it absolutely is crucial in the overall design to try to mitigate traffic fatalities and provide safety for pedestrians. One of the big things that we deal with that most people aren't aware of is everyone talks about the distracted driver program, cell phones, eating in the car, reaching back to get your kids straight in the car seat, whatever it is that we're doing that distracts us. Sometimes we had a crash recently that was a distracted walker or distracted pedestrian. That happens. Headphones when you're walking at night, not wearing proper clothing, certain things that could create a situation that is unsafe for the pedestrian. And so all of these are elements that at the beginning of the year, we sit down and we plan for these evolutions. We can always pivot when we have crashes or other things that come up. But for the most part, we try to plan them so that we can get out in the community, educate the community that they're going on, give people warning where we can, and then come out there and really stop some of these issues. Our overarching goal, contrary to popular belief, is not to generate revenue with citations. That is not the overarching goal. That may be an end product, right? An undesired effect, or if you're from finance, it's a desired effect. It depends on how you look at it, right? But the idea is not to generate revenue with citations. The idea is to save lives and prevent fatalities and prevent crashes. That is the goal. And so that is the purpose of citations, is to really give people an opportunity to learn and discontinue behavior that could create dangerous situations. So from a police department perspective, especially me as the chief, I give a year-end report. At the end of every year, we discuss all things traffic in that year-end report. I'll be giving that here shortly to the CPOC, the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, and then again to the council. where we'll talk about some of these things that happen with regard to crashes, other road safety issues, and things that are really important to this community. So I have my lieutenant here that can give you a few stats, if you don't mind coming up, Tony. Just a few stats that are important, that may be important to you as we move forward with this discussion.
Hello. Thanks for having me. So to the chief's point, I'm Anthony Russo. I'm the lieutenant over the traffic section. Some of the stuff that he was talking about, like that really enables us to do the enforcement piece and the education that he's talking about, is our partnership with the Office of Traffic Safety and OTS, because they give us roughly $500,000 annually to go out there and provide equipment like our DUI trailer, or to provide the staffing so that we can do these programs, when they matter, and with the personnel that we have, because we're so limited and inundated with what we have to deal with in the city, just with complaints and things that I receive from community members like yourselves. And I've read emails from people that couldn't be here today, concerned about either speeding or people not stopping for stop signs or crosswalks, and the dangers that it is as a pedestrian out there, especially with so much inattention going on. There's so many distractions with the cell phone or the autonomous vehicles. And so I don't have to rely on these things, or I'm stopped at a stop sign. I can stop for a minute. I can glance at my phone, and now I can go. And then, the situation changed in front of me. And now there's a pedestrian or something else, a small child that, came out of the street, and then there's a tragic collision that we have to respond to. And that's something that our motor unit does. Like our major accident investigation team goes out and responds to every one of these serious fatal collisions. Hey, how are you? And they've got to do that. And so it's something that they carry with them, too. And so we always have to remind that, I have motors that have been working in this city for almost 30 years that have responded to every single almost fatal that you see up there. And when we were going through this PowerPoint earlier today, I had my team, I wanted the team to see what Joaquin was going to present from DOT to make sure that our traffic division is on the same page as what our DOT division is trying to do. And we meet regularly with them. We have monthly meetings. And as they looked at those dots, every single one of them was like, oh, that was my fatal. That was my collision, or that was mine. I mean, they take safety in the city seriously. And so I just want to convey that to all of you, that it's a burden they carry. And so just for your consideration with District 7, like I just pulled some of the stats related to citywide activity and stuff in comparison that may be of interest to you. But like the total number of crashes in the city in 2025 that we had reported was like 1,010, and 165 of those were in District 7. So fatal crashes, there was one. There were three. One of those, as we are all aware, was a beloved member of Caltech that happened just around the corner here. That was another unfortunate situation. Being in a crosswalk crossing, I can share that he was doing everything right in that situation, and the other driver wasn't necessarily doing anything wrong. He stopped to look at a vehicle that was stopping for him to continue to cross, and the car that was approaching didn't see him stopped because now he was in the intersection just by the angle or whatever, and unfortunately struck him. And that's the type of incidents that happen in a moment that timing all lines up, and then we have one of these catastrophic events. And that was one of the fatals, the only fatal that happened in District 7. The primary crash factors that the chief talked about, we look at because we gauge our enforcement based on those. So we want to understand, just like DOT is, what is the driving cause throughout the city that is actually causing these crashes? And can we go look at preemptively an intersection that may have similar conditions, and then make the engineering changes to correct that issue so that we don't have that type of crash there. So we look at what is causing crashes throughout the city. The interesting thing as far as District 7 goes is unsafe speed and improper turning are the main causes of crashes throughout our city. That's the number one cause. 19.4% of all the crashes that we have are one of those two violations. In District 7, 22% of those are actually automobile right-of-ways. They're just people failing to yield to somebody, making a left turn, doing something else in front of an approaching car that they shouldn't have because they were trying to make that turn. Improper turning is the second one, and then unsafe speed is actually the third factor here in District 7. That doesn't mean that unsafe speed isn't a serious thing and that those things don't fluctuate, but as far as the reporting for 2025 went, unsafe speed actually fell into the third cause at 15% of the crashes. Those 165 were related to speed. There were 5 bicyclist crashes, only 1 that was severe, and the other were just other visible injuries. And then we had 16 pedestrian-involved crashes in District 7. That's compared to 57 total for the citywide for bicyclists and 98 pedestrian crashes for the pedestrians involved. And then to talk, last thing I'll say is about the citations and the enforcement that we do. It is something that I took over traffic in 2020, the end of 2020. My time is coming to an end, and I'll hand the torch off to the next individual, and they'll have kind of their take on how they lead the section. My thing was very much about making the contacts with the public. I stressed that the officers, even if they felt the violation wasn't serious enough, like, I don't really want to give that person a ticket for that. I was like, make the stop, make the contact, educate the driver about it, issue a warning if you want, or just a verbal. But the fact is that people drive through these areas, they see the red lights or the bike, they see the car stopped. That impacts so many drivers driving through that area than it does if they don't engage the lights or make the traffic stop. And I think that has a calming effect on the speed, and it has an intention effect for people to think that, oh, cops will hide here, or there's going to be a police officer here, I should be safe as I go through this section. So that's what we're trying to get by making the stops. We issued 1,037 citations in District 7 last year. 6,786 citywide was what we issued. And again, that counts both education warnings and citations where you have to go to court and have a summons. But those are the contacts that we made throughout the city that we were able to do just in 2025. And obviously we'll continue the efforts depending on, again, the voices that we get from you. I receive emails and phone calls. Those dictate where we're deploying our resources. And that's all very important for us. So thank you.
Thanks, Tori. One last thing I'll do in closing before we hand it over is make sure that we give credit, some credit where credit is due. It's really important to let the people know what the city is doing on behalf of the folks in this community. You heard Joaquin from DOT. They are one of the most responsive groups that you'll ever come across. They take this seriously. They get out here to try and correct engineering solutions or find engineering solutions to correct problems. They are top notch, and it is an actual pleasure for us to deal with them as a police department in trying to correct some of these problems. The other piece that's super important is just making sure that we communicate, that we always have an opportunity to talk and sit down. We want to come out to any meeting. We want to be a part of any public action, any public activity that can draw attention to these issues. And anywhere we can help, we certainly want to make ourselves available for that. Last thing is technology's coming that will help us in some of our endeavors. We're looking at some drone technology. We're looking at some photo taking or picture taking technology, digital mapping technology that will help us in mitigating some of these problems and certainly reacting to them once they've happened. So stand by for that on the next iteration of these meetings. We should have some updates on some of those things. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the council member.
So I want to thank everyone for speaking. Thank you, Lieutenant Russo, and all of you we'll go to questions in a second. First, I always want to say, whenever the command staff is all together in one room, I always think if this building gets hit by a comet, our police department's in trouble. So I feel like you should have a designated survivor, like DC Shoot should get out. I think every time we're all together. I want to recognize a couple of people who are here, and then we'll go to questions. My predecessor in office, Councilmember Andy Wilson, is here with us. And then if you are a commissioner serving in District 7, from District 7 or appointed by the mayor, will you please stand for 1 second and let everyone thank you for your presence here? It takes a lot of time to give service to the city, and I'm grateful to each of these people who are very dedicated to our community. I did some quick math while Lieutenant Russo was giving us figures. We are disproportionately overrepresented in every one of the categories you gave us. Tickets issued, accidents in the city, bike accidents, and pedestrian accidents. So which maybe is no surprise because District 7 includes a huge part of the Central District and the very dense urban core. We have two of the three business shopping districts. We have the most rental units are in this district. So it's not surprising. It's a dense part of the city, but it is a real concern for our community. So with that, I'd like to hear from you comments and or questions for anyone here that we can answer. And they're going to bring a mic around. So I think what we'll try to do is work our way back row by row by row. And then if the front rows decide you want to talk, I'll come over and hand a mic over.
My question's for Joaquin. You said something about street speeds being unenforceable because people pay attention, it sounded like, to the condition of the street, what it feels like the speed should be, and then they drive at that speed. Is that did I kind of get that?
It is kind of that. What happens is for us to set a speed limit, we have to take counts of the free flow speed, so what traffic is moving without congestion, and determine what 85% of the people are traveling at or below. And this is a state law, but it's really tied to how people perceive the safety of the street and what speed they can drive at safely. Okay. So it's that determines the speed limit, and without that determination, we cannot use radar or LiDAR to enforce that.
So my concern is California. It just feels really fast, and as soon as people hit that section that has 2 lanes in each direction, they go. And pedestrians don't stand a chance on most of those intersections. And so I was wondering, based on what you said, did the changes to Cordova to make that more pedestrian friendly just move people up to Del Mar and to California? And then I live on the next very little street, Fillmore, and I noticed a lot of traffic cutting through Fillmore to get to their destination. So do you look at the knock-on impact?
We do. That's a great question. One of the things that we do after a major project like Cordova is conduct an after study. We'll compare the counts not only on that street, but on the adjacent streets and the speeds on those streets to determine if there has been spillover created by whatever treatment was installed on the street that we're looking at. With respect to California, one of the things that we also do is look at the signal timing and the progression there to be able to try to use the signal spacing to slow down traffic. Because at the end of the day, we want to be able to engineer the street to a slower speed so that we can reduce the speed limit as well. As a safety corridor, we will have the ability to reduce the speed limit 5 miles an hour and still be able to enforce once we go through that process with this new law, since we've defined it as a safety corridor. But really, we want to be able to create a system where it's not comfortable to be driving at 40 miles an hour when there's a mix of pedestrians, and especially a high dense residential area like we have on California.
Here, I'll be up here.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for your talk and all the information. I live in California, and I got hit by a car while I was crossing the street a couple of years ago. And looking into it, I figured out that there's no cameras at any intersection in Pasadena. And I'm curious, I wanted to hear more about the technology that you mentioned briefly at the end, how you're going to be introducing that, and how that is going to play into your data collection and what changes you anticipate from that.
Some of those are things that we've already started using, like flock cameras. Might have heard a little bit about that. The DOT cameras and things that are at intersections are all those things that are in play. The upgrade of some of those cameras, Joaquin could probably talk a little bit more in detail about that. But the idea is to not oversaturate, but certainly put enough visible or visual tools so that we get the opportunity to see what's going on in real time. So one of the things that we're putting together, it's going to cost us some money, it's going to take some time, is our Active Intelligence Center, which will have real-time information coming into our AIC that will give us real-time impact on what's happening in the street today. So we can respond to it directly as opposed to waiting for a 911 call or waiting for an accident to happen or waiting for another accident to happen. We can respond to things in real time. So those are things that are forthcoming. The biggest piece for us is making sure that we are analyzing the data and providing software that gives us some really quick turnaround on the analysis so that we can make the changes that we need to make that you heard Joaquin talking about. That gives us the opportunity to really mitigate these things in quick order, in short order, so that we're not having delays in getting things done. So that's a big deal as far as our future is concerned. And so maybe some of the details of the technology, Joaquin could talk.
Thank you. With respect to speeding specifically, a recent assembly bill was passed that allows a number of cities now, I think it's 6, to implement automated speed enforcement. It's something that we're on the list. We want to be able to start that process, but we have to wait for some of these pilot cities to get further along. San Francisco is kind of on the leading edge of this, and their program is in place. A number of other cities, including our neighbor Glendale, are still in process in order to get those implemented. But for us, that's a game changer, because I think one of the pieces, again, in all these instances where speed is such an important factor in the severity of a collision, is being able to, on these corridors that we know we have speed issues, put the automated speed enforcement cameras in place to provide that citation, which I won't go into all the details, but it's not a moving violation per se. It's another citation, but it does have an effect on motorists when they start getting citations that escalate every time you're speeding along a corridor. The other piece, which we didn't really talk about because it's a little bit out of kind of the realm of what a municipality can do, is more at the state and federal level with the vehicle technology. There's technology in vehicles now, as everybody knows, that can restrict speeds on certain vehicles. It can a certain assembly bill that's not moving forward right now was just to issue a warning on the dash to a motorist saying you're going too fast because the speed limit is this and you're doing this fast. Even something like that is being at a legislative level kind of not moving forward because there's too many concerns about what that means, if it's a nuisance, and there's a number of groups that are opposing it. I'm in favor of speed restrictors on vehicles altogether. If you're in a residential street, you shouldn't be going 50 miles an hour. If, the Tesla, now you can put it in the safe mode, and a lot of these vehicles that have autonomy built in where if you have a child driving a car, it'll do that. It'll restrict the speeds based on the speed limit and based on the type of street. So I think it's an important part, and I know it takes that control away from the driver. It has a number of other concerns associated with it, but something as simple as that would have had direct impact on some of the fatalities we've seen in the city.
Councilmember, if I can just, one last thing real quick. So in my job, I get lots of people send me emails through the city website. And so something that happened, and I've been here 3.5 years, somebody helped with us with the, not just technology, but people. People have their cameras in their house on the roadway, and they said, hey, give us a hand here. This white Chevy, whatever, is coming through, barreling through, and it had speed humps and everything. And sure enough, they showed us a video 3 times. That car was just barreling through and kind of going over the speed hump really quickly. So I sent it to the chief. I suppose he sent it to Lieutenant Russo. And we get an email the next day. Thank you. I saw him pulled over and got a ticket, and it stopped. So you can be part of the solution too. Reach out. We're here to help.
First off, so my name is Sylvia. I want to first say that thank you for doing this. I am a colleague and friend of Kenny Lau, who passed away last month, and I'm also here with other fellow colleagues, and we appreciate you making the time for this. I have kind of a few questions. Well, I'll try to keep them brief, but I wonder if, as you noted, at signaled intersections, that represents a large number of accidents with pedestrians. So I'm personally from Vancouver, Canada, and what is the norm there, which I found surprising here, is that any time, let's say, north to south traffic has right of way, the pedestrian lights that are parallel to that are always on. And to me, I didn't realize how much that signaled to a driver that there are always pedestrians around. And I was very surprised personally to note that every intersection in Pasadena requires you to hit a button. And if that button is not hit, that light is always off. And so I believe that, like you were mentioning before, we need to introduce friction for drivers and awareness that there are pedestrians in the city. And so I wonder if that is something that you would consider that is relatively low cost to implement some kind of system like that.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that we have implemented throughout a number of intersections in the Central District, and I don't know the exact number, but it's a significant amount, is that what we call that pedestrian recall, that the walk will come up at every single phase if you're on the main street or on the cross street. And that pedestrian recall usually is time of day, so we'll run it from about 7 a.m. until we know that that volume of pedestrians is lower, because it does cycle the intersection through. But it is something that we have at I want to say at least 40 or 50 intersections, at least throughout the Central Districts, is that pedestrian recall. In addition, on the main street phase, like that north-south phase, the walk should always come up with the main street phase. It's the cross street that won't get the walk. If it's not happening, well, we'll definitely look into that, because the intent is on that main street phase, you have enough time to serve the pedestrian with the walk and the flashing don't walk with. Whereas if it's the cross street, that doesn't always come up. You may not have that time. So I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but I do appreciate that. And if there's corridors that you're not seeing that, I'd love to know about them.
I appreciate that, because I live on Cordova. I've lived on Cordova for 7 years, and I've biked and walked as much as I could in that time. And I will just say, as my personal experience, is there are many days where I choose not to walk or bike because I do not feel safe, especially during the winter time when it's dark. And the intersection that Kenny passed at is one I know very well that I don't cross because I do not believe it is safe. I don't want to take up too much time, but for me, there's intersections where you have painted signs or painted crosswalks and dark signs with low visibility, to me, feel more dangerous than if they were there at all, because I believe they make a pedestrian possibly believe they are more visible, when as a driver going down that street, I already know that it is hard to see people at those intersections. I understand and appreciate that you guys are extremely involved and extremely interested in fixing these things. When I consider just my very short walk to Caltech, I just simply don't feel safe currently.
So a couple things that I've noticed.
Can you go right into the mic, Sanders?
Oh, hello. Couple things that I've noticed is when I go down California.
Hold it right up. Right in front.
The angle.
Here?
A little higher, straight in.
Here?
Turn.
Hello? Oh, hello. Oh, okay. Couple things that I've noticed is when I drive down California and or Del Mar, about 3 o'clock or so, everything seems to go fairly smoothly. The lights, etc., and it goes. At about 5 o'clock, the lights seem to all be synchronized, and people just fly down California. And they fly down California, and then this isn't even local. It's like they get off the freeway. Fly down California or Del Mar, but particularly California, across Mitchalinda to Huntington Drive to Arcadia. There is just a steady flow, and it's fast. It's like the lights are completely synchronized all the way down California. And that's it's very scary. It's like a little freeway. And most of these people, these are not local people that are taking into account that their neighbors are around. They're people that are off work, going home, outside of Pasadena, and they just fly down that street. And the difference is between 3 o'clock and then the lights seem to be differently synchronized at 5 o'clock. So people can just speed through and get out of town. This is terrible. The other thing I'd like to say is about Caltech and Poly, that there's no strong signage anywhere that these are school zones, massive fines. There's no sign, there's no nothing. And I would at least at the minimum, because I've crossed at San Pasqual and Wilson and gotten cut off in the crosswalk. So why aren't there speed bumps from Del Mar to California or in front of Poly to down California? Why aren't there speed bumps from there down? There's no reason people should go faster than we've got the smartest people in the world around here, and we should be taking care of them. And I think
great.
speed bumps from California or from Del Mar, on Wilson all the way down to where it dead ends past Poly. And it should be signage everywhere, school zones, massive fines, police around the corner or something.
I think you bring up some really good points. One of the issues, not the issues, one of the concerns that you brought up, I guess that is an issue, the speed hump issue, is something that recently City Council has modified the speed hump policy. Speed humps are traditionally supposed to be put on low volume residential streets. So a street like Wilson wouldn't qualify. However, with the Greenways program, so Wilson, because it crosses the freeway, a number of other factors, it didn't qualify before. However, now with our Greenways program and because of the action of City Council and the work that Pasadena Complete Streets Coalition has done and just a lot of feedback that we're getting and really, again, direction from from City Council is now streets like Wilson, the 4 greenways that we have, are eligible for speed humps if they meet the other criteria. So that's something that we're looking into. It'll be something that will be discussed as part of the Greenways program as we're going through and seeing how we can reduce safety on those corridors, specifically Wilson. The other item that you brought up was another good point, the Del Mar and California. A few years ago, we put in an adaptive traffic control system that ended up being a little too efficient. So that progression that you see, that ability to have a green light at every signal, is something that, again, Councilmember Lyon had brought up from what he was hearing from residents is we're getting, these speeds are picking up along these streets, east-west streets, and the north-south streets aren't getting enough time to cross. We went back in the system, we started looking at that, and we've really started cranking down that time, started doing things with the signal so that while it's still efficient, we're not creating that corridor speed throughout the entire city. We have breaks in that timing so that, as you cross a major street, you'll get stopped at a major signal. So we're working on that now. It's a lot of that coordination timing went in as recently as 2 weeks ago, if I remember correctly. So look for that now as you look at some of the timing on the streets. But definitely reach out if you're continuing to see. Again, we balance efficiency, moving of people and goods with safety, and safety always takes the priority. So if we see conditions where that is causing or creating a situation where cars are able to go, 45 miles an hour on a street that they should be going 30, then we definitely want to be able to use the traffic signals to control that better.
Thank you. My name is Ellie, and I also want to say I'm grateful for an evening like this to hear what's going on, as well as to ask questions and comments. So I appreciate the education and the engineering. I would like to appreciate enforcement a little bit more. I'm sorry, but as I walk or drive up or down Lake Avenue, I see cars doing U-turns all up and down the street, illegal. I would love to see some traffic police there to cite these people for doing that. That is a great safety issue for drivers, but for all of us, whatever we do. But I think when we get hit in the pocket, and I'm one of those, I pay attention a little bit more. I would appreciate the opportunity to see traffic cops on the street, policing the streets. Thank you.
We're on it. Yes, ma'am.
I want to say it's helpful from our perspective, and I'm glad everyone's seeing it, when other people nod like this when you hear something. So keep that up, because it really is helpful to see this is resonating with people. So I'm going to bring one here, and then we'll come over to Mish.
Thank you. Thanks for putting together this meeting. I appreciate it. For obvious reasons, injuries are the focus of discussion and traffic issues. But is there any kind of a tracking? I wonder if there's any kind of tracking for non-injury collisions. There's a stretch of California, just west of Catalina, right down here, where every few months in the middle of the night, somebody will either be distracted or fall asleep and plow into parked cars. Cars will be on the sidewalk or sometimes even on the adjoining property's lawn. And sometimes they even try to take off and police respond right away. But I wonder if there's something that we could do as citizens to kind of help with that issue.
I think that's very generous of you to assume that that's falling asleep driving as opposed to some other cause. But
Thank you for the question. The first part of it is, yes, we do track the collisions that are reported or that we observe. So those are tracked. And the result of that tracking is working with folks like DOT and others, the state and even the county, to try and ID what some of those problems might be so that we can address it through those 3 E's. And so the first question is yes. The second part of it is what you can do is make sure that if you're starting to see patterns, things that we may not see or it may take us a little while to see based on where we are elsewhere in the city, please feel free to call. You can call the traffic section. You can call our non-emergency line. And I hate to say the more complaints, the better, but sometimes we need to know, and we can't fix it if we don't know that it's broken, and we want to know. So to the extent that it's a real crash, it's something significant enough for you to think that it needs to call us. And then we can get out there and maybe take a statement or figure out what's going on and monitor the intersections in ways that don't require us to position a police car or a radio car there. So in some examples, we have some specific data collection devices that we can put in places to determine whether or not there are crashes at intersections that are regular, how often those happen, and what we need to do to mitigate it. So there are options. We just need to get the call. So feel free to call us. We will never turn you away. We'll always take the call and always move on it.
And there's sort of an ongoing conversation. This is a concern for me too. I'm not sure we're capturing all of what's happening. So we make sure they know if we know, but we're also trying to work on a mechanism to make sure there's an easy way to capture all of what's happening. Make sure. Oh, okay.
Yeah, my name's Greg. I live on Bonnie Avenue, and my question I spent a lot of my life on Hill, Del Mar, and Cordova, and those are just incredibly packed, busy times. And I guess my question is, how do you look at new development? Because I accept that that's where PCC and that's just a high traffic area. But I fail to see, I know that there's this new building that's going to add 260 parking spots right there on that same area, which makes no sense to me. And I know a lot of the St. Phillips communities really raise a lot of concerns on parking, on driving. I don't really feel like we're being heard. And so how does the city incorporate new development in terms of how that impacts parking? Because as I see it, that place is almost a parking lot. It was supposed to be a road right now. And so we're going to add 260 more cars. I just don't see how it's going to flow.
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that we do when we're conducting our traffic analysis, and there's two types. There's the CEQA analysis, which doesn't look at that specifically. We look at safety of kind of the building and the driveways, but we also do a local mobility analysis that looks at kind of the intersection level conditions and those links, those roadway links. And there we do look at collision history and try to see if there's any hotspots or areas that could be improved. One of the things, though, with the way development review works and conditions are set, we can't require a new development to pay for an existing deficiency. But what it does do is it allows us to determine what those are so we can look for ways to improving that. And if that means us putting in another capital improvement program project to make those improvements, it's the review that we've done through the development that helps identify some of these conditions.
That number is area code 626-744-4241.
That's a non-emergency. You got one. Okay. There we go.
Actually, my question is just expanding on that. So thank you so much for being here and for communicating for the city to all of us. And thank you for looking at all of us nodding along. But when we're not in the same room and able to nod and talk to you in person in real time, and we have things that we want to report. I just had a near crash, in my car, or as I was walking my dog, or I just saw something, or I'm really concerned I'm seeing a pattern here. Can you please tell us what is the best way for us to report each of those incidents that is easy, and who to report what to? And if you could give us like a few different modes to use, because some of us aren't so comfortable with like sending an email, while we're in the middle of the street or sidewalk. Some of us aren't as comfortable with calling, and maybe it's, in the middle of the night or something. So I think giving us ways that we can be more participatory together with you for these issues would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's a great question. One of probably the best way to get a concern or an issue or an incident reported that's outside of PD. So obviously, if there's a crash and you need a PD response, that's one thing. But if it's a concern for safety, if it's something that you want to report as an issue, is our City Service Center app. So it's an app, it's a phone number, it's a website. I really encourage everybody to download it. If it's on your phone, it's the easiest way because it can use your location. There's a number of things. You can take a picture of what you saw and incorporate it in there. And one of the fields in the City Service Center app is traffic issues. We're looking at seeing how we can kind of improve some of the language there. Maybe we have a traffic safety issue subsection, seeing what we can do with the app to be able to highlight that as a field. And it's it's an open form field, right? You put in your name, location, and date and time, I think, if that's not stamped in. But it allows you to write narrative of what the concern is. And this is really for everything. If it's a parking issue and you want our enforcement to go out there, you put that in the app. It goes directly to our dispatch, and our dispatch will send somebody out there. If it's a concern about walking down the street and you are in a near miss situation and you want us to take a look at that intersection, or if you've seen property damage only collisions, but nobody called PD, you can put it in that app as well, so that we can track that. And that goes, the usefulness is that it goes really to all the departments that need to see it, and it allows us to track it and have a record of it. Because for us, having that information on a record through a system like this really beats the phone call to like an individual staff member. You can call the CSC app, the CSC Service Center. I forget the hours on there, but they can take the phone call. You can send it through email. You can use the app. There's a number of ways to do that. So I encourage you to use that option.
Let me take this moment to encourage. We'll come back up there in a second. If you don't have it, I'd love it if you got out your phone right now and went to your little app store and search Pasadena or CSC or City Service Center app. Any service need you have from the city, a pothole, fallen palm fronds, reporting traffic issues, we can do through that. And the response is fast. It goes straight into the system. It doesn't have to get translated through a million people. So I really recommend that you use it. It's called, if you search Pasadena, it'll come up. Pasadena CSC or City Service Center. I'll help you find it in a minute if you want. Pasadena City Service Center. And it's the best way to communicate with the city for service needs.
I want to say, first of all, thank you to the new lights at Glenarm and Euclid, and more importantly, Marengo and Fillmore. I was recently crossing from Marengo across over on the Fillmore side. I was in the intersection at the island, and the light had been buzzing, and I listen, I hear, I'm very alert. This car went so fast. I mean, the fastest I've ever seen. I wish I could have taken a photograph or whatever, but just to let you know, they speed down there fast, but this was super fast. So I'm very grateful for the extra light, though. And I live at the very, very southern tip of Pasadena, by Glenarm and Marengo. And so the light at Glenarm and Fillmore, no, not Fillmore, Glenarm and Marengo is improved dramatically. And I walk through there every day. But the one that has not improved yet, because you don't have anything but a stop sign at the high school, it's the first light as you come up. I can't remember what. they go through that constantly, straight through that stop sign at the high school. Yeah, just FYI. Thank you.
One more here, and we're going.
And then up there, I know there are some hands.
Thank you. My name is Vahagan. I live on 721 Cordova Street. Thank you, gentlemen, for presentation. I want to raise a critical issue on the intersection of South Oak Knoll and Cordova. A couple of times we already heard this street name. So the situation is dangerous. We have limited visibility due to corner buildings, and combined with the high speed on Cordova Street and no traffic calming. Because of this, drivers are forced to roll past the stop line and block the crosswalk just to see oncoming traffic. It creates a blind trap. 1 year ago, I submitted a formal request, and unfortunately, there hasn't been a result yet. The reality has been tragic because we have already lost a life there. So I decided to install a camera that looks directly on this intersection. So beyond that fatality, there are near misses every month that don't make the official statistics, unfortunately, minor incidents. And for today's meeting, I sent a detailed analysis with photos and diagrams to all of you, gentlemen. And I ask you to please review it. And I invite you, by the way, to meet us there. And let's look at the real situation on the ground before something happens. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Isabella Kirk, and I'm a double graduate from here. And since I never left Caltech, I live on Catalina Avenue, nearby this cross-section we're talking about, San Pascual and Wilson. We have 2 stop signs there instead of 4, and that still creates a problem. I witnessed 2 accidents in that intersection, number 1. Last one I took some pictures of. It's still dangerous. Yes, there is a sign saying, "Oh, the cars coming from Wilson from the cross street won't stop." But if somebody's speeding, and there are a lot of people speeding just across from Caltech graduate student houses, they're going 50 miles and more. They're not going to read the sign, and they do. Even on the stop sign going on Catalina, they're gonna do California roll instead of really full stop while the other car is speeding the other way. And that's how the 2 last accident happened, number 1. And number 2, I witnessed also a couple of students being hit by a speeding car while they were either walking or on a board, and that's not nice. The car just went by. I went check on the guys. They were, hit, but not hospitalized. But still, that's very dangerous to have this kind of speeding on the street where you have the graduate houses just across from my place. And I am afraid to cross the street myself. So we need to really think of something. I was thinking, we have Mentor going one way. It has this sign on Del Mar, light sign. Okay, so it's a real light sign. We should have one on Del Mar and Catalina, number 1. And perhaps the best thing to reduce the traffic, because I remember when I bought my condo across from Caltech student houses, that was 2001, and the traffic was less than 1/4 of what it is now. So, and the cars were not speeding like they are now. So there is tremendous amount of cars, and a lot of them are really speeding like they're in a big hurry. So something has to be done. Maybe speed limit posted, maybe these meters showing what speed they are going. And as I was saying, Mentor is going one way. Perhaps we could have one way. That's that part from San Pascual to Del Mar, going towards Del Mar in opposite way as the other street. So to reduce some traffic, people going from California can take them right on Wilson or left on Wilson.
Want to make sure we have time for but understood.
Something to really look at.
I see them taking notes over here.
Yeah,
about each of those streets. And
but
to definitely hear about each of those streets on a regular basis. I think we're coming over to Red Sweatshirt, I think. Then I'll get the one down here. I'll come your way.
Hi. I think that the goal to have 0 traffic deaths by 2035 is important and good. And I think there are 2 ways to look at it. One is 9 years is like depressingly far in the future. And the second is I think 9 years is probably an unrealistic timeline given the time scale for previous projects. So like if you look at the Greenways project, its feasibility study concluded and they recommended it in 2015. It's now been 11 years since 2015. So how are we going to get to 0 traffic deaths and implementing these very good ideas if it takes this kind of timeline? Is there any plan to try to accelerate how quickly we can implement these solutions?
Fantastic question. And I just realized the hour, so this will be our last question, but then we can talk afterward for anybody who wants.
That is a great question. So in 2015, when we did our original bicycle transportation action plan, those corridors were identified as these Greenway corridors. And then back in 2020 or 2021, I forget the year, 2022, we did a feasibility study to start looking at some of these treatments and see what that would mean to traffic patterns and circulation. It was based on that second study, the feasibility study that we did about 4 or 5 years ago, that allowed us to really pursue funding for these treatments. So we were able to pursue grant funding for these Greenway projects and now have the ability to go through this outreach design and pay for construction all through the same grant fund. So a big part of this and what impacts the timeline quite a bit is that funding source. Our capital improvement program is about 90% grant funded, and we really are aggressive. Our staff is really aggressive at pursuing as much funding as we can to improve these types of streets. But it's something that we in the past 4 or 5 years have really become a lot better at getting these grant funding sources and trying to implement things quickly. The other piece of that is the quick build program. So being able to put something in paint and plastic to reduce speeds allows us to do it much faster and at a much a reduced cost. But that also includes a lot of outreach. So we want to make sure that as we do this, we've gone through the process. We've asked the residents and the community members in that area how they feel about these things, not only before we do them, but after we do and during the quick build. So we get that feedback in order to determine if we can take the next step into concrete construction.
This was a big part of the conversation when the 0 plan came to the Municipal Services Committee. Is it a realistic timeline? And we believe it is. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and for staying through. I hear you. This is an issue that I hear about a lot, and I advocate to the city. And please keep letting me know your experience. Please keep I didn't introduce Pam Thyrett as our district liaison. Pam, are you still in here? Yoo-hoo! You can always reach out to Pam and me if you feel like you're getting a response from the city or you feel like you're not getting a response from the city. But that's what we're here for, to help facilitate the conversation. So thank you for being here. City staff will be here for a bit until they make us move out of the building. And thank you. Good night.